Okay, nou kom ons by die geskrewe onderhoud, so hierdie moet julle ook gaan leer. Nou, onderhoud word in 'n vraag-antwoord metode gedoen of dit word as 'n artikel geskryf. Dit is gewoonlik gerig op die versameling van kennis vir navorsingsdoeleinde. Okay, important to note the word of. If we look at vraag-antwoord methode, so meaning question-answer method, then we can do it like the dialogue, okay? We can have the interviewer being Tandi and Vuyo being the interviewee. So die onderhoudvoerder is Tandi en die persoon wat die onderhoud aan deelneem is dan nou Vuyo. So Tandi gaan dan vra, wat gaan ons môre doen? And Vuyo will give the answer. Then Tandi will give a question again and Vuyo will give an answer again. Okay, so that's one option. The other option is that it is written in the form of an article. So it's an article, like the example that they've given here. Okay, either one of them is correct. I'm not going to tell you which one you need to do. It will obviously depend on the question. So if the question says, skryf die onderhoud in 'n vraag-antwoord methode, then you'll have to do it in the question-answer method like your dialogue. If they say doen it in 'n artikel vorm, then you will have to write it in an article form. If they do not specify, then you can do either or. Obviously, vraag-antwoord methode is baie makliker. It's a lot easier because then you will just use your dialogue format with your question, answer. If you're doing it in the article form, then you're going to use this method. Goed, so jy begin eerstens met 'n titel vir jou artikel. So there has to be a title for your article, and then of course, who is the person who is doing the interview, okay? Goed. Then there will be a little bit of a introduction. David Lou is die eerste wenner van die Afrikaanse Idols reeks. Hy is 'n talentvolle sanger en het pas 'n nuwe CD uitgereik. So this is similar to the scenario that you create in your dialogue. Okay, so it's a little bit of background. David Lou is the first winner of the Afrikaans Idol series, and he is a very talented singer and has just released a new CD. Then you start with your first question. Baie van die Suid-Afrikaanse idols verdwyn van die toneel na hul debuut CD. Hoe verseker jy dat dieselfde lot jou nie tref nie? So a lot of the South African idols disappear after they have released their first debut album. How do you ensure that this will not happen to you? And then he answers, idols stel jou 'n groot aantal mense bloot. Maar wanneer die reeks verby is, word jy in die duister gelaat. So idols introduces you to a big load of people or a lot of people, but when the series is over, you are left in the dark. So this can happen in the same way as the above mentioned. So here you will have Adrian, dubbelpunt, and then the question, and then you will have here Dewald, dubbelpunt, and the answer. Alright. So jy begin dadelik met die onderhoud, start immediately with the interview. Even if you do it in the other format where it's the name, then the question, and then the name, and then the answer, start with your interview immediately. Stop with all this, how are you, I'm doing well, that stuff. We don't need that. Goed. Die onderhoud moet interessant wees, en dit moet die leser se belangstelling prikkel. So it has to be interesting, and it has to keep the interest of the reader. Die titel of opskrif is kort en treffend en moet by die onderhoud pas. So the title is short, it has a wow factor, it is intriguing, and it has to fit in with the topic. So here it says, idols groei steeds, Dewald Lou. So here we know that we're talking to Dewald Lou, and we're going to talk about idols and idols' influence in his career. Inhoud, inligting moet logies en georden wees. So again, start with the, obviously, let's say, for example, a few years ago, the grade 12s, I think it was for the English paper, had a question about someone, there was a famous lady whose husband got murdered in front of her. Obviously, you're not going to start with that question. So you'll start with basic questions leading up to the major question, which is what led to the murder or whatever the case might be. Okay, so there has to be still a basic plot line. Start with the easy questions, start with the simple questions leading up to this wow question, and then you go off maybe a few simple questions. For example, in this case, waar je nou, like it says here, where are you headed now? Okay, so you lead it up and then you go back down again. Goed, die inligting moet duidelik uiteengesit word, so we need to know definitely which is the question, which is the answer. You see here the question is in italics and then the answer is written normally. Now obviously not all of you are able to write in italics, but maybe have a V for vraag and an A for answer, antwoord. Okay, so a V for question and an A for answer. That will help make sure that we know what's happening. Vrae en antwoorde moet duidelik en relevant wees, so it has to be clear questions and it has to be relevant to the topic. Don't ask him about his role as judge on American's Got Talent, because that has nothing to do with idols, okay? Unless his answer is, I met the producer when I was busy with idols and he asked me if I wanted to join them. That's a different situation, okay? So again, it has to be relevant to the topic. Taal en styl moet toepaslik wees vir die teikenleser, moet in gedagte gehou word. So your language and style must be fitting to your topic. If you are, for example, said that you are doing the news, obviously it will be a much more formal interview than what we are doing now, okay? If they're saying you are a talk show host, then you can be formal, you can be informal, depending on how you want your talk show to be held. In this case, it's a lot more informal. I think it was done for LitNet, as you can see here at the bottom. So it is a very informal internet Afrikaans reading page. So it's really not something that you need to be very formal with. But again, teikenleser, so who is your target audience? If you are writing this for your local newspaper, again, remember when we did the newspaper, I said we need to make sure that we're not going to be too formal or too high up with the jargon, because there are a lot of people who read the local newspapers who are maybe not that advanced in their language, okay? So make sure that you read carefully in your question where the interview will be published, and then decide for yourself, who is my target audience going to be? Am I going to use very big words? Am I going to use average words? Is it maybe for a primary school newspaper? Am I going to use very simple words? What am I going to do? Die kommunikasieproses moet gemaklik, natuurlijk en vloeiend wees. So the communication process has to be comfortable, natural and flowy. What does that mean? It means if he answers a question, let's say for example, he says there are quite a lot of daar's 'n hele klomp van die idols beoordelaars wat jou wil help of wat aanbied om jou te help na die tyd. So there's a lot of idols, judges who offer to help you afterwards. Then based on that question or that answer, you can ask the following question: watter een van die idols judges het jou benader of het enige een van hulle jou benader om vir jou te vra, kan ek jou help, is jy alright, het jy hulp nodig? Okay, so that's what they mean by that. So it has to be a natural flow. Don't just stick to your guns and your notes and your everything and like, I need to ask these questions. If he answers something differently, then you ask questions based on what he answered. Okay. Goed, dan as ons gaan kyk na die wenke, the tips and tricks that they give you. Goed. Feite of inligting kan in 'n onderhoud gegee word, so obviously facts or information depending on what it is you're doing. In this case, we are talking to someone who was part of the idols, therefore it is information. But Let's say, for example, heaven forbid, they ask you questions or they ask you to do an interview at the end of the year with a doctor who helped with this virus issue or whatever the case might be. Then we're going to look for facts instead of information. If we're looking for facts, then I'm looking for statistics, then I'm looking for numbers, then I'm looking for scientific research. Né? If you answer a question, then you'll say, well, according to the research we've done so far, we have realized that A, B, and C happens. It doesn't necessarily need to be factual because obviously you are not going to have all the facts with you in the exam, but answer your questions as if you have the research. Goed. Die titel van die onderwerp, of vat die onderwerp saam, so the title contains what you are going to be talking about. Simple as that. A subtitle, subtitles can also be given, but it's really not necessary. Die onderhoud kan 'n vraag-antwoord metode wees. We've already spoken that, like in a dialogue, or you can write it in an article like the example is here. Deeglike beplanning en navorsing en kennis oor die onderwerp is belangrik. So, obviously forget about research because you won't be able to do research beforehand in your exams. But you need to do proper planning, okay? You cannot just have a bunch of questions and fall into it, or one or two questions and then fall away. You have to think carefully. If I ask this question, what will my response be? Wat gaan my terugvoer wees? Wat gaan my antwoord wees? As my antwoord byvoorbeeld A gaan wees, hoe gaan ek vraag 2 vra? So if my answer is A, how will I structure question 2? If, for example, question 1 will have a completely random answer, how will I link question 2 to that? Alright? So you have to think carefully what you're going to be writing about, and therefore you will need knowledge. If they ask you to write an article about a tsunami that hit Taiwan and you don't even know where the hell Taiwan is, don't attempt the question. Alright? Make sure you know what the question is asking you before you attempt it. Goed. Dit word in die teenwoordige tyd geskryf, so everything is happening in the present tense, and it says there is tydgebonde, which means if your question is going to be vertel vir ons wat jou ondervinding was op idols. Explain to us what your experience was in idols. Then your answer will be in the past tense, but the question is in the present tense. Okay? So that's basically what they mean. Try your best not to jump too much between future tense answers and present tense answers and all of those kinds of things. Try and keep it simple. Don't confuse yourself. And then die slotparagraaf vat die onderhoud saam. So the conclusion or the last paragraph will take the interview together. Obviously, in a dialogue form interview, you will not necessarily have a last paragraph, but in something like this, you will have something where you will say, we are looking forward to seeing what Dewald is going to do in the future, or whatever the case might be. Always remember all these niceties that you guys put in, like, oh, I love your outfit, and rubbish like that. It wastes your word count. It's 120 to 150 words. So try and avoid that and stick to what the content or the topic is about, so that you will be able to answer it as easy as possible with as much needed information as possible. Good.